Welcome back to Brothers in Boots. My name is Mike.
It's Jeff.
I'm Chris.
And today we are going to be talking about the potential consequences of MTO choices. Now, in this video, we're not saying any of the choices anybody's made is necessarily wrong, but these are just things you're going to be dealing with and potential long-term reactions to the stuff that you choose when you do an MTO boot. And today it looks like Jeff has a beautiful bottle of Michter's Bourbon 10-year.
It is. It is a 2014 release. Is, in my opinion, the last year that it was really worth buying. 2013 was exceptional. Go back to 2009, it was actually Stetzel Weller juice. But about the last of it for me, but 14 is really good. Good stuff. You can find some vintage stuff on somebody's shelf. Definitely for it.
I think the last one I was able to find was a 2021, and it wasn't bad, but I don't think it was something I'd go out of my way to hunt down.
It's just because they've gotten it from like 3 or 4 different places at this point, at least 3. And so it's where they source it from, and then it's how old it actually was. It's always had a 10-year age statement, but the first few years were actually like 16 years old. And at the point of this 2014, it was still about 12 years old. And after 14 is when they started being like dead on at the 10 mark. It's one of the reasons it's not as good. And the other is a change of sources.
Makes sense. I do like the Michter's products, though. That's one of the probably more consistent brands these days, along with Four Roses, at least for their like kind of standard everyday releases.
For what's available, it is surprisingly good.
Okie dokie. Alrighty. So now that we've talked about good bourbon, which I will say Michter's is one of my favorites. That's why I recognize the bottle right away. We'll get right into this. So step 1 of the consequences of MTO choices is you've picked your new MTO builder. You found somebody that will do a custom fitting based off your fit sheet that will tack pieces of leather on and do the build. There's not many left that'll do it, but say you found one. And the first thing you find that you've sized yourself or measured something wrong. 9 times out of 10, people do this by quite simply altering the measurements they see or taking them multiple times and picking the one they like. Doing them in wrong socks. Even, crazy things like not quite knowing exactly where to line up the tape, because the tape does equate to anatomical pieces on your foot, not necessarily a specific region. A good example is the ball wraps around the bone just behind your pinky toe and the actual ball of your foot. That's not always in the same spot. For some people, they're pretty level. For someone like me, they actually curve this way quite a bit. Varies a lot person to person. Just ask Jeff how much he enjoys finding the cuboid bone.
That was really hard. Shockingly hard. I gotta believe that's the biggest reason. That's the one that nobody asks for. I mean,
oh yeah,
most of the builders, that's the one that they leave out.
It's short heel and long heel for anybody that has never heard that measurement before, and it's specifically getting in front and behind the cuboid bones, and it's more relevant to a pull-on boot or a boot where the gussets can lay completely flat on a tongue in your instep area. I think it's just Buck is the only non-pull-on builder that asks for it that I can think of. I think that's right.
I'm not convinced that he's actually using the measurement though.
100%, but I think because even Gabbard doesn't ask for him unless it's for a pull-on boot. That's not in his standard list of asks. So, but yeah, I mean, in wrong size, it's hard to show a picture of like what wrong sizing is, but it's going to be too far across the toe, too wide, too narrow. Maybe they stuck a piece of leather somewhere it shouldn't have been. I mean, builders are human, obviously, but it usually comes from wrong measurements, not using the correct socks, changing the socks, not using the ones that you're custom measured in, so on and so forth. Made to measure gives a lot of freedoms, but it also comes with some negatives. You've got to do the process right.
And I would say,
and it's about as important the customer to make sure that they do it right when it's being done remotely too, because it is so hard. I mean, it's like If you're using a pen, does it have the same diameter? If you're using a pencil, pencils are usually more uniform, but the diameter of it is going to make a difference. If you're dead on straight up and down, that makes a difference. If you tilt it just the littlest bit, makes a big difference. If you tilt it just the littlest bit the other way, big difference. So, I mean, you could, and I've done this. I went the last time that I was doing measuring. I picked the two socks that I'd be wearing most. There's a pair of Darn Toughs and a thicker pair of merino wool socks that I can't remember the name of the brand. And I did a measurement with each sock in the morning, and then I did a measurement with each sock in the evening, the same day after I'd been walking all damn day. And so that was 4 measurements I was sitting there staring at, and they were surprisingly different. So just the time of day or even the time of season can make a difference. Or some of this stuff is up to the builder to recognize, and maybe the builder might notice something to say, hey, can you take a additional measurement, because I want to make sure that you measured that correctly.
Well, what I was going to say is what I've seen more than one person do, especially getting from their boots from an Indonesian maker, is ordering multiple pairs at the same time from a maker they've never ordered from before and not having their measurements correct. So they've just compounded the problem across multiple pairs of boots, and they've had to sell them because they don't fit.
Well, there was a guy recently that came up that had admitted that he took the measurements that he took, he actually added to them before sharing the numbers with the builder. So he wasn't even sharing the actual numbers. He was trying to, like, I don't know, go over top and be smarter than everybody else and force the builder to make something different that ended up fitting wrong. And then he got mad that it didn't fit right. So don't try to circumvent. Give them the measurement. And if you think that you would like them to be a little bit different, then discuss that with them and let them make that adjustment.
Yeah. Especially when we're talking adding. If you want the boots to fit loose, say you want them to fit loose, but give the correct measurements. It's also important because, we're talking about, in this case, like people who tack on and use their same patterns, but this gets even worse if they make patterns for you. If they don't have a standard set of graded patterns and they do custom patterns for your foot, this is all suddenly going to get even worse. You're compounding on 2 different phases of the problem now instead of just one.
We could also say that weight is a bigger issue than a lot of people think too. Mm-hmm. There's people that buy a pair of boots, like say they bought a pair of whites that were a 9E, and then 4 years later they go to buy a new pair of boots and they don't tell anybody that they gained 30 pounds. And they get their boots, and maybe they're a half a size too small and a half a size too narrow, and they're all upset. And then somebody realizes, oh, well, if you gain 30 pounds, then
you've got to go up a width, no problem, maybe even 2. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you with my Gabbard measurements I sit in when I did the order in very early 2022, and then the ones that I did in person this year. Mine are different between an 1/8 and an 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. And when I did those measurements, I was right around 225, maybe 230 on a bad day. And, right now I'm between 185 and 190 when I did those measurements. And like I said, it took me down a solid width. Like my base last was originally, when I did it at that time, was evaluated at an 8.5E and then build up. Currently, right now, I'm being evaluated at 8.5C before build up. It makes a difference.
Huge difference.
Well, and most people will tell you, if you've lost 10 pounds, especially quickly, right? Like lost 10 pounds within a month, you'll see big changes like that way more. And it's a number of reasons too, whether it's like dehydration, the weight loss is going to be concentrated in areas of high usage and blood flow, especially if it's something like hyperthyroidism, where the blood flow is the highest, is the areas that are going to lose it the most with the extra hormones that's being pushed through the system. Those are all things that are going to compound, right? And it's a thing that matters. The John Bristow, the Happiness Carpenter, is the first pair of boots that Creosote had to actually rebuild because he had lost a lot of weight due to a medical issue about 3 months before his boots were due. It was close to like 25 pounds, but yeah. And due to that, like, he got a pair that was just sloppy, floppy, loosey goosey.
I've forgotten about that.
Mm-hmm. It's the only pair he's ever had to redo. And since then, he always asks, if you've lost more than 10 pounds, you need to let me know, and we need to redo your measurements. I'm pretty sure he has a video up about that too on his YouTube channel. But yeah, I mean, sizing's a thing. And you know, it's one of those things that, like, the weight gain is a really good example. If you wear the pair while you're gaining weight, you will stretch it as you go through the cycle. Like, not only is it broken into your foot at one size, you will stretch it as you put the weight on, versus a brand new pair that has no break in, that's already got some stretch and did not go through the gradual changes. That this is really the important part. And it's the same thing with losing weight, except for the problem with losing weight is there's no way to ever take that volume out besides adding in insoles.
Especially with the higher quality, thicker leathers that we usually discuss. It takes a lot longer to stretch those out.
Mm-hmm. And there's, yeah, it's even worse too if you have like a really low temper leather like Chrome XL, because that's already kind of gotten blown out from wearing it, and then you lose like 20 pounds. So you put an insole in to eat up that volume, but that leather's already blown out. The problem with Chrome XL is it'll keep blowing out even more. So you're going to keep compounding your problem over time, especially because you're raising your heel up. You're not in the heel cup. So now you're going to blow out a different part of the leather as your ankle's, half an inch higher than it was. So now instead of having an ankle bend spot this big, now it's an ankle bend spot this big. And, next time you add a piece in, next thing you know, you're bringing in a whole 50-cent piece worth of nickel ankle size. But it's just one of those realities. Weight gain's a big part of it. Another thing is when you're over 250, a lot of times the makers will take a heel stack out to make it a little more comfortable on your knees and hips. So if you ever wondered why the P&Ws ask for weight, that's why. Cool.
Sometimes they'll add another heel stack for different issues.
Yep.
So it does depend. But so, yeah, I mean, we're just saying that there's a lot of reasons that you can get wrong sizing, and that your own sizing can in fact change quicker and easier than most people realize. Most people think, oh, I turned 20, I'm a full-fledged adult, my foot's going to be the same size until I die. That's false. It's not. The chances of your foot staying the same size for 60 years is almost zero.
Yep. Even for people who maintain a consistent weight and don't fluctuate, you should still get sized every 10 years. You will have differences about every 10 years that need to be accounted for.
And it's not just weight. It's as the body starts to, deteriorate a little bit. Our feet actually get wider as we get older because everything starts to flatten out and therefore go a little bit wider. So people's feet, even if they stay the same weight and are, healthy and exercise, they can actually end up with wider feet, start feeling like my boots are too tight.
Real common in the blue car industry, just wearing out those ligaments and muscles in the feet, because the feet are basically a giant joint.
Oh, then the next, consequences, bad choices, colors?
Yeah, so it's just makeups that don't necessarily look well together. That's going to be a combination of like some 2-tone leathers, 3-tone leathers, bad contrasting stitching, maybe like you did like a dark brown kudu setup with like some nice like burgundy thread, but you put a green outsole on it or a white outsole on it. just things that like seem like they're a good idea at the time and long term don't be. A great example of this is the white Vibram Christie that everybody wants. God, does it look like spilled milk after it's got 100 miles on it. It does not stay white. It does not stay clean unless you want to get saddle soap and scrape the edges to try to pull all the contaminants that get into the side of that thing. It's just not a good long-term choice. But I've got a couple pictures here. So the first one is, this is a real factory color of this model of Jetta. It's called the Harlequin. You could order this at one point in time. If someone makes a boot that's got a panel that's every different color, you need to let me know, because I need to see a picture of it. I mean, I'll never wear or buy it, but you need to let me know. We will feature it on the channel.
I've shared this photo several times in boot groups, trying to push people into doing such a thing. Because just like Mike, there's no fucking way I would do it, but I am dying to see it. Somebody has got to have the nerve one day to make sure every panel is a different color. It might actually even look good, but I doubt it.
I'll believe that when I see it. But you could be the one, and then we could talk about you.
VW sold a lot of those.
Yeah, they did.
VW sold a lot of that Harlequin color.
They absolutely did. The next one I got up here is, this is a pair of, I believe this is a Tahura model, but the model doesn't matter so much. This is another example of two-tone with a couple extra work. These are, JD likes his flames and his kind of over-the-top designs. There's nothing wrong with these designs, but this, might not be for you. This might be a cool idea that you decide one day is like, man, I want a boot like that. That could be cool. You wear it outside a couple times and you think, oh man, why did I do that?
Yeah, those are ones that you really need to have the confidence to pull something like that off, that you really need to be comfortable with it. If you do start going with more colors, you probably should understand some basic color matching. So matching it with the rest of your outfit looks coherent.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, is the more you get into contrasting colors on the boots, the more difficult it makes it to put together a complete outfit with those boots. Unless you're going to go for like one color for the rest of your outfit. So if you got Ronald McDonald boots and did red and yellow, then the rest of your outfit needs to be either yellow or red, or, something like that. That's obviously an extreme example, but
For some people, I think it might just be like their age. Some people at certain ages are a little bit more daring and they become more conservative as they get older. I certainly used to do a lot of colors. I used to have boots in like every fucking color that I could think of. And I would try to match them with my outfits every day when I got dressed. And I'm almost to the point where it's all black for me.
Yeah, bold is tough. Like, there's a confidence level to bold, but there's also a I guess social acceptance depending on where you live. Some areas it might be easier to pull this off, like Southern California versus, I don't know, pick an area where you can't be as open as Southern California. I don't know what that is. That's probably should have thought that example through a little more.
A lot of small town Midwest.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, there you go. Small town Midwest. I'm in a small town Midwest, but it's just one of those things that like there's definitely things that are more accepting in some areas versus others. And we're probably past the age of ostracization to a certain point, but it still exists. It's not something that's completely disappeared entirely, and it might be one of those things that someone just might not take you seriously when they see you wearing your Harlequin, boot.
Right. Or you might just get some good-natured ball busting, but you got to have the confidence to be able to take that.
Yeah. So we've got colors, wild colors, even if they're only one tone. And then there's multiple tones. You got some people really like two tones. Got an occasional person that likes a three tone. And then you have the Harlequin that nobody's tried. In addition to that, which we could expand on and probably will in a moment, you've got contrasting thread instead of matching thread. which can certainly be a mistake. And I guess that's it. I guess those are kind of the categories as far as the colors.
Yeah, it'd just be like weird
colors.
Yeah, like weird outsole colors, weird edge dressing colors, like stuff like that. And we can get into that a little bit later. But I mean, there are certain like odd choices that you could do that would be weird. Another actually interesting one when it comes to colors. A lot of people don't realize like how easy it is to discolor white thread. Like sometimes white thread looks like the perfect matching counterpart to whatever color you're doing, especially if it's like black. Lots of people like that contrast. It's a nice, heavy, bold contrast. But white thread does get dirty very easy. Like once the wax wears off, you've gotten it wet a couple times, the lighter colored threads do get dirty very quick, and that could very easily be a mistake too. That's another color based mistake,
or it could be an improvement.
No, it's true too.
I actually like it when my white thread is not quite as white anymore. Or to give an example that shows a little bit more brightly, these were bright white laces, and they are no longer bright white, but I actually like the laces better now. So I think with a little bit of wear, sometimes that's an improvement.
Yeah, very much true. Patina is always a good thing. Well, okay, maybe I shouldn't say that. Patina is mostly a good thing.
Done naturally.
Well, I mean, you don't want patina on your dress shoes, and you might have a particular pair of shoes that's for a specific occasion you don't want patina on.
Yeah, that is correct.
But yeah, I mean,
we see green thread, we see orange thread, we see yellow thread,
gold,
red
khaki,
thread,
red, browns.
I was
blacks.
trying to think of the showy ones, not the normal ones.
Yeah.
But yeah. And you know they can look great. There's one guy, Matt, that has a pair of blue Law Tannery Bisons, and he's got yellow thread all over the place.
Yep.
And they look fantastic.
Yep. This is green
that's
with
not
yellow.
as showy, but that's
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's green with yellow. Not quite as showy, but this is also a like more of a yellow color, where Matt's is like a nice brilliant golden, so they really do pop.
I think he's a Michigan fan, so I think part of that had to do with his team colors.
Yep. I was thinking about that earlier.
Which I'm surprised. I'm surprised I don't see more of that in the MTOs. I think most of them would be mistakes, but I'm surprised.
The Ronald McDonald example earlier, I was thinking Washington Redskin colors, actually. Someone might do it Washington Commanders. Fucking put me on a stake.
No,
impale me.
They'll never be Commanders. Fuck that.
So,
like black and yellow. Lots of teams with black and
if you want to get boots for your game day, that might be the time to do that, but you might not wear them outside of game day.
I used to be a huge sports fan, and I used to coordinate everything on Sunday when I got up in the morning to watch football.
Oh.
And not anymore, but there was a time where I certainly would have been color matching.
No, I can see why people would. I can also see why people would. And once again, as we said, not everything here is necessarily a mistake. It's why it could be a mistake for you. Mm-hmm. That's another important point here. But colors are a big deal. Just like is the next thing we're going on to, your toe selection. So toe selection has multiple parts, but a lot of people think they like toe caps. They love the look of toe caps. They think toe caps are great. But there's a downside to toe caps. Here is a great example of that. This is a structured toe with a toe cap. All of this right here is because there's only one part this boot can flex. It's got a actual leather toe puff here. It is a toe cap. This is the only part that can flex. And because of that, all of your toe cap boots are going to look like this. Depending on what kind of toe structure you have, your toe cap's going to deshape a little bit. Now, this one is a leather one, so it won't deshape much. But if you have a soft toe or a single elastic toe cap, it's going to deshape and deform and move over time. There's ways to fix it, but it's going to happen. And you just got to understand that when you get a toe cap, especially one that's not a soft toe, like you have one flex point, and it's right here. That's it. That's the only point the boot can flex. Some people like the above silhouette. Some people hate it, but like that's the reality. And another similar point is kind of on that same vein, but a little different. Is like, this is a monkey. It's the same thing. You have to flex in this area right here. Like, this is where your flexing is going to happen. There's going to be some that's going to happen here, but the combination of the lace to toe and the lineman's patch, it limits your flexing to right here. And a lot of monkey boots are going to show this. Like, I'm wearing my Shell Cordovan monkey boots that show it real well too, that you know, you're going to get flexing in a specific point. And that's just the nature of the toe structure.
Mine does it more evenly than I would have expected.
No.
I mean, you can see these those marks right there. That's a big point. It's doing a lot more there than it is here.
No.
But you can still see it's almost like a word, a circle.
Yeah,
circle.
oval, crescent. Yeah.
Crescent's what I was looking for. But yeah, it does it in 2 points, you said. And, you know, with these boots, I mean, it's not true with all boots, but this here is an extra 6-ounce piece of leather on top of this. I mean, they didn't just take a piece of leather and add stitching to it. I mean, in this area, you've got twice as much leather.
Yep. And that's for that prototype style that's not quite the same. This lace to toe monkey style, there's actually, this piece goes all the way back. There's actually 3 pieces of leather here in these, like, what does Michelle call these? The, like, P&W monkey or something. It's the P&W inspired monkey, but in this kind of lace to toe style, you actually get a 3rd piece of leather. So I have one of the prototype monkeys as well, and it does flex in this area a little bit easier than the only one that they sell now. But yeah, it's just because the one I'm wearing, the Renovs here, they are that same style too, and you can see that same crescent already there in that area there. It's the same deal. Now that's only got a single piece right there on the toe. These lace to toe ones are actually double pieced on the toe. There's actually 2 pieces here. So
the other thing with a leather toe cap, beyond what we've said, is where that cap falls and how long your toes are.
yes.
Some people have really long toes. Some people have really short toes. That has nothing to do with the total length of their foot. So depending on how long your toes are, where that falls might not just limit where your crease is. It might force a crease that is really uncomfortable for your toes.
Yes, where it pushes really hard in a spot. Yep.
I've gone back and forth on I was going to say it was going to be part of what I said later when we were talking about our own personal regrets, but I've kind of had a problem with the leather toe caps where I don't like them as much as I used to. And a lot of it for me is because my feet are so wide, where that extra leather toe cap makes the boot look even wider. So when I've got a wide foot to begin with, it makes the boot look even wider, because we're talking about a thick, full piece of leather. So some of these, we're talking 8-9 ounces of extra leather on top of an already thick leather boot. And when it's wide, it makes it look even wider. So like an example is these that are sitting on the same exact last. Same exact last. They're both the right foot. Same last, same builder, same everything. But you can see that toe box area looks bigger and wider. And I don't like the look of it when I'm looking down on it with the cap as much as I like the look of my foot without the cap. So I don't know. It's frustrating for me, and I kind of go back and forth because I do love the look of the cap, and I do love the contrast stitching on the cap. But for me, it makes my boot look too wide, too bulky.
Yeah, it's on a particularly big toe on that last too. No, All very valid points. And structured toe plays into a lot of this too. You know, if the toe doesn't have a celastic piece, doesn't have a steel toe, composite toe, you know, any kind of safety toe, or leather toe puff, maybe double or triple celastic, that all adds a lot to this because, you know, that celastic or those safety toes, those are extra thicknesses making that toe even more bulbous because those are at layers that are on top of the last. You're going to have your steer hide liner, you're going to have then your celastic or your safety toe, then you're going to have your first layer of leather, then you're going to have your second layer of leather for the toe cap. You're just adding more thickness.
And with celastic, they can cut it longer or shorter too. Some of them are gonna stop here. Some of them are gonna stop like way back here. Depends on the builder, or maybe depends on what you say to the builder when you're having it made, but they're not always the same length. And that of course is gonna change the creases and whatnot in your toe box when it bends.
Oh yeah, the Indonesians don't like barely take it past the lip of the toe. Like as the toe curls over the last, they go like 1/8 of an inch past that lip. So it's an extremely short, almost the front of the toe celastic.
Which I think generally is the better way. It's still going to allow the boot to bend where it wants to, where your foot wants it to. Without necessarily have everything creasing and falling down and looking weathered faster for no good reason.
Nope.
I do like celastic. I do like a little bit of structure.
I would agree.
Don't want anything falling down on my toes.
Yeah. And soft toes are definitely for the right person. It's got a specific look and it's got a specific feel that is very different from a structured toe. I personally, I think I have like 2 pairs that don't have a structured toe. I definitely lean heavily into the structured toe camp. But it's important to know what you get with that. There are consequences of that choice, of both of them. I think it's kind of one of the things we talked about a lot in the beginning that's a real important point here is there are no perfect boot. There's no perfect answer. It's all situational. There's no like these 7 settings are perfect and there's no reason to deviate from them. That doesn't exist. There's a pro and a con to everything. There's no like always do the Dr. Soul monkey boot with the dress patch. Nothing's better than this. Why would anybody deviate from this? Well, I can name 5 reasons to deviate from this. They're all personal and they're all situational, but I can name 5 reasons right off the hop that you would want to deviate from that. You know, some people get in a groove. It is what it is, but generally speaking, there's no like perfect makeup that's like, you can maybe settle on like 3 makeups that are perfect for you. I'd say that's probably pretty common. Is everyone's got like a 3-step makeup of like their fucking Sunday boot, their casual weekend / night out boot, and then their boot that they do everything else in. But that's
variety is a spice of life, and then the situations you're wearing them in. Yep. We mentioned steel toes and safety composite toes with regard to making the boot visually look larger. It can also be a big mistake for comfort and wear while you're wearing that boot. There are how do you approach this? There's some younger people and some tough people that just want to be tough and they think, I gotta have a steel toe. Most people grow out of that, and most people that have had to wear steel toes will say, if I didn't have to, I wouldn't. And I even know people that have to wear steel toes that'll order MTOs that are triple celastic instead of the steel toe. Is it going to protect their feet? No. But might it get their boss off their ass and have their boss think that they're following the rules? Yeah, it might. And they're willing to take that risk because not having a steel toe is that much more comfortable.
Now, this is just an observation, not something you should do.
Yes, we're not advocating getting triple celastic on your 77 last so that you...
No, but good luck suing me. I think everybody knows I'm speaking my opinion.
We do not have to be approved by OSHA. We are not licensed contractors.
Yes. Follow the rules of your job. The other thing about steel is, if you live in a cold climate, it's cold.
It's cold in the winter. Go composite, baby.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you don't have to do steel for OSHA reasons, and you live in a cold climate, that's probably not the best option for you.
100%.
If you don't gotta, don't.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even when it comes to composite toe, because while the composite toes fit better, oh boy, do they look goofy. You think the steel looks goofy? Wait till you see how goofy the composite looks, because to get the same strength, it's got to be 4 times the thickness.
I can count on 3 fingers the people I've known in my life that have not had to wear a steel toe and choose to and want to. 3 people. And I have been in the construction industry for years, so I know a lot of tough guys. I know a lot of people that have to. I have only known 3 people that don't have to and have chosen it and think that it's a good idea that they want to have. That number was higher when I was in high school, and you had the skinheads that had to have their steel-toed Doc Martens. So I guess I should say 3 people past high school.
That's a fad that's died
Definitely knew some of
anyway.
those people.
Yeah, that's a fad that's died out over the years, unless they're getting, what's that real gothy brand, like Dark Rock or something like that? The ones that have the big flame boots with the spikes sticking out of them.
Oh,
Yeah, I can't remember. I remember seeing a video of a pair being cut in half and it looked dumb, and then like 6 months later I saw a professional wrestler wearing them as part of his ring attire. So
seems appropriate.
Oh, it was. He was a spooky, scary character. So
Yep.
yeah. The next thing on kind of composite toe, and this is going to be a picture I'm going to bring up here, is these are actually a pair of my own boots. These are a pair of Grant Stone Shell Cordovan in their brass boot, which is the Floyd Last. This wasn't a straight up mistake. Shell Cordovan with this particular mock toe and the way that Shell wants to roll with that structured edge looks terrible. Also, this little bump you see on the side, that is actually the shell coming in on the structured toe. Those little bumps there are actually you seeing a structured toe in action on something that it shows. It's not a particularly great looking pair of boots, unfortunately. They should be great. They should be awesome. This is fucking Horween Garnet Shell, one of the rarest colors. But it just doesn't look good. It never has from the first wear. So this is another kind of one of those things of like knowing your target. When it comes to Shell Cordovan, for example, no toe cap, plain toe is the way to go with Shell. It's going to show all the beauty of Shell versus trying to do Shell with a toe cap or trying to do Shell with a mock toe. Split toe Norwegians can look really good with it, especially when it's like the really flat split toes where they merge them together square ways instead of merging them together this way. They could look really cool. There's a couple guys that have made some neat ones that way.
Removing the characteristics of the shell that you should be enjoying and that you should want to see, and you should want others to recognize if you want them to know, hey, I'm wearing shell. Because it rolls instead of creasing, and you won't get the same rolls if you add all this crap to your toe box.
You could do a really short toe cap, but it needs to be probably a boot that's made to measure and designed for your foot so that gap is correctly sized with the toe cap. So you're talking like bespoke guys.
It should probably also be a faux toe cap in that situation. Mm-hmm. Just putting some stitching across to make it look like it. I still think an actual toe cap would be a mistake in that situation.
Yeah, no, I agree.
We are talking opinions.
Yep. No, you're not wrong. Like this one right here. This is an actual faux toe cap. This is not a real toe cap. This is an example of kind of how you can keep that sleek look but have the toe cap look. So, not every situation is correct for a true toe cap. Kind of an unpopular opinion in the heritage boot world. There's a whole group of people that are going to hear me say it and be like, oh my God, why would you ever not do a true double toe cap? Because you want this nice, specific, elegant look. That's exactly why you wouldn't do it. If you had done this with a real toe cap, especially with the thickness of this particular leather, because this leather, if you look at from this angle here, I mean, this is P&W levels thick. This would expand out. I don't have one sitting here, but this would expand out another to about here, and then this whole thing would have to come out this far, just to be a single row. That's why you do this.
Well, I think it also goes back to, you know, what was the purpose of a true toe cap? And that was to give your boots more longevity because you were working a job that was going to wear through the toe. That's not the case with a lot of people in the community.
Yep. No.
When you've got a rotation of 10 or more boots and you work a white collar job, you're not going to wear the toe cap out. So that is not a popular opinion, I'm sure, but it seems overkill for the use case.
It's funny. Let's talk white collar job and wearing a toe cap out. I have busted all the way through the toe of this one. Like, if you look, I have gone completely into this. And the dog did this one, not the server. Well, the server did this one and this one right here, but the dog did this one, and then a server made it worse. But that's all the way through, and you can see the next layer under it. So a pair of roll clubs at that.
I consider you and me, Mike, gray collar workers, because most of the time we're white collar, but occasionally we go and do some actual labor.
Have you seen this summer? I'm pretty sure I've been fucking inundated into as a permanent data center employee. I've been in the data center more this summer than some of their security guards on rotation have.
I think I'm probably in gray collar, if we're gonna say that, for most of my life, one way or another. I spent a lot of years in auto parts. I mean, the server room, I've been in server rooms. I worked in one once for a while. Like, my desk was in one. But I find the worst things to be a parts department. If you're walking through those metal aisles that are narrow and you're pulling parts off of these things and running around corners, there is everything to snag yourself on, knock yourself on, hit yourself on. I mean, it's horrendous. I wouldn't wear any of my watches to work.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't wear my good boots to work. I never knew when I was going to damage something because I came around a corner wrong, hit something wrong.
Yep.
And then, of course, in recent years, it's been more when I go out into the field versus when I'm sitting in the office for construction. So sometimes it's easy, and some other times, I mean, I might be climbing onto a front loader. So
you qualify. You're a gray collar worker like us.
But yeah, I mean, getting a leather toe cap for a blue collar situation is doubling the lifetime of your boot, because it takes twice as long to wear a hole through to your foot. And for white collar, it might just be for looks, in which case it might just be putting a stitch there and having it be faux. And it doesn't have to be because faux is cheaper. It could be because faux looks better visually in your situation.
Yep.
Yeah, you're not going to get a nice sleek look like this with a real cap toe.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's going to get way too wide, way too chunky, way too quick.
Yep.
For the mock toe, in addition to what was already said on them, mock toes can be big mistakes as well. There's some people that are just in love with mock toes. Gotta have mock toes. Mock toes are the best. And I run into a lot of people that are like, I feel like the mock toe is making it tighter. I feel like it was a mistake that I've got two boots with the same last, and the one with the mock toe is nowhere near as comfortable. Sometimes it just changes the way that everything breaks, even if it's not something like shell, even if it's just a regular like CXL.
Well, I thought Carl Borowski said it pretty well in a video I was watching not too long ago, where a lot of construction workers wear mock toes, but you've introduced a weakness in the toe of the boot. So even if it's just a decorative stitch, you now have a lot more holes in it. Or if it's a true two-piece mock toe, now you've introduced a break point that construction workers are very prone to break.
Yep. Well, that's what Jeff was talking about with the fit is what happens in the two pieces that depending on how much that thread stretches, when they stick the last in, you get two completely different sizes. When he said it changes the fit, he means that the mock toe in general makes the toe box feel roomier.
Yep.
Yeah,
I was also talking about the practical application.
Two-piece mock toes break all the time. Like there's a reason people like knew how to fix those pretty easily and have curved needles around to fix their Carolinas or whatever.
A two-piece can feel roomier, but a one-piece can feel the opposite.
Yeah.
So it does
take stretch out of the vamp. Yep.
Right. Yep.
I mean, there is purpose in the two-piece. The two-piece does create extra toe room. There is good purpose there, but like Chris just said, that is a point where those stitches are going to pull apart and kill your boot faster because it's a weak spot. It's going to introduce water. It's going to introduce dirt, and the stitches are going to fail. And then when you go to the ones where it's pure stitching, then you're 100% looks on a work boot.
It adds a little structure to the top of the toe if you needed it for some reason. Like say you set like server doors down on the top of it. I could see that being a scenario where you add some structure there. But like that's varies neither word. That's extremely use case specific. Like there's a couple areas I could see where you could add some benefit by doing it by adding that little bit of structure to a plain toe essentially. But I mean, you're getting into like specialty tools. That's when you got that like $700 snap-on tool in your work chest that you use twice a year, and that's the only time it ever gets used. I feel like we're kind of getting into that territory when it comes to one-piece mock toes.
Yeah, but that tool you use twice might save you $500 every time you use it.
That's true too.
There is no perfect mock toe. And I guess this is a side note that I hope we don't spend too long on, but say it anyway. I don't think there is a perfect mock toe. We could discuss the Russell moccasin, and in a lot of ways, it's incredible. I mean, if you'd seen pictures of it, if you Google pictures of it, what they do is phenomenal. I mean, they've got a piece of leather on the inside that's wrapping all the way around. Then they've got another one that's going up that turns into the mock. And then they've got an additional strip of leather that goes on top of the mock seam.
Yep, it's French binding
to protect the seam so that you don't have the breakage. And it's the most expensive mock toe, and it's the most perfect one. But you've still lost all that extra space that the two-piece mock toe gives you because it's got that wrapped around piece of leather to it, meaning that interior size is no more roomy than a regular pair of boots.
Yep.
So there is no perfect.
And that also forces them to use a Blake stitch method too. They now have to Blake stitch that boot. There's no way to Goodyear welt it. There's no way to stitch down it or anything like that.
Moving on.
No, it's all a solid point. Yeah. Lineman flaps. Let me pull a picture up here so that everybody can see what they are. Lineman flaps are a combination of a lineman patch and a flap. This particular one here is operating a little bit more like a lineman patch than a flap, but generally speaking, lineman flaps are curled out to go with the outsole stitch, stitched into the uppers, and then have one eyelet that lines up with another eyelet, maybe two, maybe three, that pass through with your lacing to give you an additional piece of leather on that side. Specifically, the reason they're called lineman's patches for lineman's gaffers, but there is more than often cases where people use them to add a splash of color to their boots. And while this could be a good thing if done tastefully, 9 times out of 10, just like the lineman patches, which are right here, you add an extra piece of leather that's got to break in. You are just like a toe cap fighting an extra flex point. You are adding pieces that are going to artificially extend your break in for probably the most people that order them, not a real reason.
Of course, just like the toe box of wearing your toe through, that lineman patch is for people that are climbing poles and trees so that they're getting wear on the sides of their boots. They're getting a lot of wear right here because it's going up against the tree.
Yep. And it's also going up against their
so,
climbing gear too, because there's climbing spikes right there as well.
Yeah, and the gear is there that can cause pain. So that's actually there as a function to provide an extra layer of leather for comfort and longevity. So, but most of the time that you see them now, I hazard to give a percentage, but most of the time you see them now, it's because people think they look cool. It might be the same exact color, but they still think that it looks cool.
Yeah. And it does.
I like it on my lunkies, so I am guilty of having them, but I would never do the ones that we've been talking about, like the ones that are going through your eyelets as well.
Yeah, like on a toe cap like this, like adding them to a boot like this, I'd definitely never do that.
Well, and that makes it worse when you add a lineman patch to one with a toe cap.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you've literally removed.
Yeah, you removed this flex point too. So it's not going to flex here. Now you're going to force all the flexing on the inside. Well, if it's an interior, you're going to put on the outside. If it's an exterior, you're going to put on the inside. But yeah, and you can double lineman's patch as well and just take out all the flex points.
Talking about an uncomfortable boot, but it looks tough.
No, absolutely. But and once again, if you need it, you need it. But I think most of the P&W guys would tell you, and I think there's been a couple of videos made that like you'll know if you need a lineman's patch or a lineman's flap. You know, use your best judgment. Buy a pair of boots that you're going to wear every day, not ones that you hate every time you put on. That's just, you know, a big piece of this.
If you are thinking about buying it for looks, just be aware that it might be taking some of the comfort out of those boots that you just bought.
Yep. Here's another example of one as well. And then finally, last but not least, when it comes to the lineman stuff, there is something called a lineman shank. And that is where they replace the leather shank in the boot with an actual piece that goes from the back of the heel to just before the ball of your toe. This is specifically for that lineman gear we were talking about, and the piece that passes under the sole of the boot, because the lineman gear will wrap around and be like this, and it'll be a spike on the inside. And so you'll be sitting on it like a rung of a ladder as you're working your way up the pole, and it's there to help the boot not flex where it needs to be. Oftentimes it's used in wedge construction because wedge soles also are not supposed to flex. If you flex a wedge sole, it will tear. That's why they make those special flex ones now that have the big cavities that are reinforced in them already. I mean, if you dig all day or you climb ladders, cool. But besides that, it's going to suck.
Lineman shank almost feels like a misnomer to me, because when we think of shanks, we think of something internal, inside of the boot that is playing a role in keeping the structure of your boot. The lineman flap, to say it differently, is a half a midsole.
Yeah.
It's an extra midsole that is only on the back half of the boot. But it does allow that waist area underneath to be flat. So when you're going up rungs, when you're going up ladders, when you're using a shovel, having that area be flat is very important. Not very important for the rest of us. I don't know that there's really any negatives to it other than price. I mean, do you really think it makes it a lot harder to walk? Do you think it makes it more rigid when you're walking?
It definitely does,
especially soon enough that.
I mean, I would never do one on a non-wedge sole boot, but I don't see any reason why you do one. I mean, they remove the shank piece and add that entire piece in. It's got to affect flexibility from that perspective. Because if you've ever had a wedge sole boot, it takes a ton of time before it feels like you're not walking in a cast on those. It's one of the reasons I can't stand that outsole.
Most of my bending is further forward. No. I don't think it's really going to affect the bending of my ankle. I think it's just a matter of being a waste of money to do it.
That is definitely
personally, I can't think of a negative.
No. Like I said, all my wedge sole stuff that has a lineman shank, it feels like I'm walking in a cast. I can't get any of that boot to flex at all.
Shaft height can be a mistake.
Yep.
There are pros and cons to both, and not everybody thinks about the pros and cons. If you make it way too tight, then it takes forever to lace it up and unlace it.
Unnecessary break-in.
It's
and all that too.
also, if your calves get too big, you could have problems with spacing, lacing up that high. Some people get calves that are really big and it really doesn't get noticed until you're up to the 8 to 16 inch height.
Yep. And your calves swell a lot, so people do notice differences with their 12-inch boots if they don't wear them every day. That like some weeks they fit better, others they don't. It's a lot of extra break-in for no reason. Anything over an 8-inch boot has way more flex points and different break-in points than the stuff that's 8 and below, or even 6 and below for that matter.
Going shorter can be a mistake.
No.
I have had it has taken me a lot longer to fully break in boots that are 6-inch than it has for me to break in boots that are 8-inch. Because being at that 6-inch point, I don't know exactly why, but it's something with the bending is harder to get that broken in bend in there.
Yeah, especially with the ankle point. Yep. It's the same with 4-inch. Going down to 4-inch boots makes it even harder.
I haven't gone that low. I've gone 5, but on my 5s, they're that Riker canvas one, so they've already got more give. So
Yeah.
I haven't noticed a negative there.
Yeah, that's one nice thing about the Rikers. The Riker, I have a Riker in 8 and a Riker in 6, and to be entirely honest, I don't even notice the upper in either of them at all. I feel the kilty more than anything else, and that is to take the kilty long break in.
The biggest reason to go taller, unless you just like that look or that toughness, is if you end up in abrasive situations where there could be abrasion to your calves, where you'd want it to be taller, or B, if you're worried about a snake biting you, you go taller, there's less of a chance that the snake is actually going to get to your skin. But generally speaking, for most people, I would say that I think 8-inch is best, even though 10-inch is the traditional PNW height, traditional standard height that they recommend. But that's more because it's a firefighter type thing, and the abrasion that they face to their skin
goes up much
being
higher.
in those situations.
No. And try to keep your personal style into account too. If you wear a lot of shorts, you're not going to wear 8-inch boots, right? like you need to be more of a pants guy for 8 inches and higher. The same thing is the reality. Like, I'll get 8-inch in work, and then I'll wear 6-inch for everything else. If you're a shorts guy or you're a summer boots guy, sure, that'll work great. But you also don't want to be caught with your pants down of only having 6-inch work boots, and then it snows 10 inches. This is the exact same problem. So it goes both ways, but your personal style is going to matter a lot to this. How you break in boots are going to matter a lot to this, and quite frankly, you just don't want to buy a pair of boots that you're not going to wear because it's like, I never needed 10-inch. Fuck that. And you can get your 10-inch boots cut down, by the way. There's plenty of cobblers that'll do a good job of that. Like, get them cut down.
It's not real hard at all. You can do it pretty easy. Mixing of leathers can be a mistake. Doing a bison top and a Seidel bottom, or reversed, or doing veg tan for half and CXL for the other half. The leathers behave differently, and they see a different life. What the boot sees underneath your pant leg while you're trying to bend and flex is not the same thing that the boot is seeing while you're picking the wheelbarrow that pissed you off, or you're walking through the mud. So they're seeing different situations, and some people will pick them because of looks instead of the function of that leather.
Yep.
Or
pick it for picking it for break-in. That's another common one. Trying to pick an easy break-in upper versus the stiff ones, it seems like a great idea, but just bear in mind that your upper is going to break in faster than your vamp. But number two, as you're moving and doing stuff and you have a softer leather and a stiffer leather, you're going to elongate the holes in all your threads. You're going to let more stuff in. You're going to pull in weird ways and cause extra creases and ripples and stuff that you wouldn't have seen in two matching tempers or matching thicknesses. Because that's another really good point, is Jeff mentioned bison, but think about it. If you had like a 4-ounce upper and an 8-ounce lower, you'd have the same temper. You'd encounter literally the exact same problem of the 9-ounce bison versus the 8-ounce Seidel. It's literally the same thing. So the specifics of that don't matter so much. It's just about how you mix the leather, and like, don't do rough out uppers. Nobody needs rough out uppers.
Yeah, there's really no point. Looks is a good point if you like that look.
It gets dirty and it grabs your pants. Like, it clings to your pants.
There is a reason that previous to like 4 years ago, nobody ever did a rough out upper. It doesn't make a functional purpose.
The company that made it as an option, I'm pretty sure under their listing just listed as it costs more money is the only thing. They didn't have a pro for it. It said a con, it costs more money. So even they didn't believe in it when they offered it. These uppers are supposed to be a lifetime. Yeah.
You resole your boots and then you rebuild your boots, which is the lowers. Your boots might have 4 different toe boxes on them during the lifetime of them, and that upper is the same piece of leather that you've been wearing the whole damn time. So if you get one that's more flexible and thinner because you want it to break in easier and be easier to move, that's shortening the life of that upper. You're not going to get what you wanted out of that boot.
Yep.
Unless you don't think you're ever going to rebuild them, in which case, it doesn't matter.
Yep. No, the uppers are the life of the boot. That is a very important point.
So what we're seeing with some of the P&W makers using like a bison upper with a other lower, that's what, more just because of market demand?
Yeah, people want the easy break-in on it. And the bison's rough, tough stuff. Like, don't let that part of it fool you. But we haven't seen a bison rebuild yet to see how well bison even rebuilds. Like, it's still new enough in the process. No one's tried it yet to see how well it works.
Bison is a lot tougher than cow. And not only is it a lot tougher, but the bison not only does not get stretched, but it sometimes gets shrunken, which makes it even tougher. Whereas the cow gets stretched, always gets stretched. So the bison is a lot tougher. The pores are bigger and the temper is usually a little bit softer. So there are trade-offs there. And I mean, I've never known anybody who's totally killed for a decade a pair of bison uppers. So I guess we don't know what that longevity will be. It could be twice as good.
Possible. The math doesn't 100% math on it. It seems like it would be the other way, but to be fair, no one's really been doing like large amounts of bison except for the last 3 years. They've always been one-offs, if they were even really done before. It's not as a complete boot.
Right.
So,
but I guess to answer your question more clearly, Chris, I think the bison's being chosen for looks, for aesthetics. It's got a cool look.
Special law.
They want that one.
Oh.
Yep.
And by they, I mean me.
No. I mean, bison uppers are super soft and easy to break in.
Yeah.
Like, to be fair, it is a very nice from that perspective. The downside to using bison in your lowers is you can ask our buddy Art, who has now blown out the toe on 2 pairs. You hit something kind of hard with it and it'll blow the grain out real quick. Like, he's destroyed the front of some law tanning ox blood on a shopping cart, and then completely torn a toe cap off of some Montana bison from Horween by a piece of metal that he was cutting. and it just turned the toe cap into perforation and just and kept going. So he's destroyed 2 bison vamps so far.
Yeah, so the metal cutting, okay, not a lot of people do that, but the shopping cart, man.
Yeah, he blew out that toe good. That was it the black cherry bighorn bison? He blew out the toe on that real good.
He's not worried about getting scratches on those anymore.
Nope.
No, don't imagine.
Luckily, that pair had a toe cap. So,
Right.
But it's a reality. I mean, we talked about this in the last episode a lot with tongues and kilties. Tongue's the same thing. Choosing your tongue leather is important. This is the same concept, right? Like sometimes when you're given choices, it's not best to exercise those choices to the fullest extent.
Because that was literally our last episode, we really don't need to spend any time on tongues.
Yep.
We already did. There are pros and cons to having it match, having it be thicker, having it be softer. But if you want to know all that, go to the previous episode because we literally went in depth on that everything.
Yep. And it goes just into leather mixing, leather choice, everything we've been talking about. Now, I've kind of covered this next one pretty extensively in some of the other stuff, but in your outsole choices, there's a lot of reasons for specific outsole choices. Outsole choices are very use case specific. They're very person specific. But picking the right outsole matters, right? Like if you're going to casually be using a boot, a Dr. Sole is a great choice. What might not be a great choice is a V100 or a V100 Red X. What also might not be a good choice is, I can tell you what will be the absolute worst choice is a Cocker sole that's got the Cocker spikes on it. That will be a terrible casual boot. But ignoring my joke, a V, for example, me and Art are both in this category, but the V430, the mini lug, I can't stand the mini lug.
Hated it.
Yeah, I everything I've had that's got a 430 on it has been replaced with something else. Yeah, no girlfriend or whatever the fuck that goes. But yeah, it's just been one of those things that I can feel the individual lugs under my toes, and I absolutely fucking hate it because the lugs are a different hardness than the rest of the outsole, and it fucking sucks. There's other examples of this too. A lot of people get the honey outsole, even if it's not the best color, because it's like, oh, it's the best on concrete, because they don't know the White X exists. That's actually slightly softer and it's black.
Or as I've nicknamed it, the black honey.
Exactly.
We've spent in a previous early episode, we spent a lot of time talking about the outsoles. So we probably shouldn't spend too much time on it here, but it depends on the person and it depends on the situation. Half sole is going to bend easier, but you don't want to be wearing that in mud and dirt and water because it's more exposed. A V100, you don't want to be tracking mud all over the place.
You don't want to be walking on concrete.
Softer toe is going to wear faster. Harder one is going to be less comfortable. So lots of factors. And like I said, if you go thinner, it looks a lot more white collar, but it also might not last as long. So lots of trade-offs, lots of things that could make them big mistakes, lots of things that could make them great choices.
Yep. Channel motto number 1, fuck the wedge sole.
Yeah, I don't like the wedge sole.
Well, the other thing too is that's important is the color. Now, obviously black is the most common, but if you get into some of the more of the Dr. Soles, the wedge soles, and even some of the Vibram, if you look at the Vibram catalog, you can get a pretty wide range of colors. So if you're trying to go for something bold, you really still need to know how colors match.
Yeah, don't get the red, white, and blue wedge.
Yeah.
It does exist.
It 100% does.
Yeah.
It's camo one too.
Yeah. One thing that was popular with a lot of black engineers for a while, and I think it is still kind of common for some people, is to get a black engineer with a green Dr. Sole sole on it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be Dr. Soul's Deante or Dayanite or whatever.
Yeah.
They have a green one too. There's probably a third one doing green. But, you know, a lot of people think that black and the green sole look great. I go back and forth on it. I don't have the nerve to do it, but I have looked at it a lot of times and thought it looked great. I just always feared it'd be a mistake.
Yep. You see that a lot with the Wesco Mr. Lou's. I think there's also a day-night red that I've seen people do a lot.
That didn't stop me from putting a white on these.
Yeah, day-night red's pretty popular on things like Allen Edmond dress shoes.
And it usually looks not good.
There's very specific leathers that it looks good with. And they're very few and far between.
Won't those come in like a dozen colors?
They've had some limited editions, but it's usually red, black, yellow, green, and brown. But they have done some like offshoots because they did do a run one time that they were like turquoise, but I've never seen that color ran again.
I thought I saw a picture that was showing really like 12.
Yeah, they've done a lot of, like, I know they did a limited run in a purple color, and then they also did a like a pastel lavender. They've done a turquoise before. They've done a blue before. I think blue might get ran on
Several
fairly
blues, like a royal blue.
Yeah. There's like an electric or a royal blue they run regularly, but they've done some like sky blue, and I think they might have done like a really dark, like almost black blue one time.
Yeah, if you Google Vibram catalog PDF, you'll see results of multiple years of their catalogs. And so you can see the different variations that they've had over the years.
Yeah, I don't know where the day-night stuff is sourced from because that's a separate company.
It is.
I don't know what distributor
An English
has.
company.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a distributor that's got like the years of day-night catalogs. I've never seen a day-night catalog.
I haven't either. Vibram's the only one I've seen that actually has a catalog.
Yeah, Dr. Souls doesn't. They've changed their stuff over the years. There's stuff that has disappeared over the years.
Yep. Yeah, Vibram, if you find their catalog, it's pretty extensive. So there's souls in there that I have never seen on anything.
And they're tough to get to.
Yes. Yeah, I have found that out.
Expensive, but yet still leaves out so much information that I want.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So hard.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. Their descriptions are just kind of like, it's just pretty
generic.
basic.
You maybe get a thickness. You maybe get you get two sizes are told to you that have no relation to what those sizes actually are. Maybe you get a hardness or a material on some of them. If you've got a Vibram distributor, they can get you more information. But like, yes.
I'm failing to find my pictures.
Yeah, they've done some crazy. They've done some.
Matter that much.
Yeah, they've done some pattern day nights before too, but they just don't do them all the time. They're not always available. Another really interesting one that comes up a lot that we get asked a ton, especially in the groups, is laces. Leather versus paracord versus cotton versus Kevlar. That comes up a ton. We have an affinity for leather laces here. A lot of people like paracord, but there's downsides to paracord. Yes, they don't break as much. Yes, they could technically have longer life, but they don't distribute as well. They're a micro abrasive that cuts into your eyelets and your speed hooks. They, if you, for example, say you like gunmetal. Gunmetal is a coated nickel speed hook, and the fastest way to make them not gunmetal is to use paracord laces. It'll take it off real fast.
I think some people just tie their laces too tight.
That's true too.
I don't break my leather laces anywhere near as much as I hear a lot of people say they do. Another advantage of leather, besides it being natural and besides it looking nice, in my opinion, it sticks more at each eyelet and stretches more at each eyelet in a way where you can customize fit better. So if this one being an example where there's more laces than normal. I might want it to be pretty loose in this area because I want more toe room and I don't want to be squoze. So I might want these first two eyelets to be kind of loose, not totally loose, but just a little bit more loose. And in this area, I might want a pretty tight fit. So I might want to be pulling a little bit harder on my laces. So you can change your fit as you go up and down with these a little bit better because it's going to kind of stay in its place relative to what you tied. But if you've got these paracord things, those laces, as you wear them, you tie them up, and as you wear them, it's going to even up all the way down. It's going to even up everything all the way up and down. Maybe that's good for you. Not good for me.
Yeah, it's not for me either. I just showed it here. If I squeeze this in where I'm tied, you can see exactly where my instep is. Like, I have a big instep bulge, and you can't have that kind of shit with paracord. With leather, when it grabs around each lace, every time you pull hard at an eyelet, that eyelet has like a position it sets in with that leather lace where it locks itself at that eyelet and doesn't care about the previous eyelets, and paracord just does not work that way. And then finally, the piece de la resistance. Heel height. Generally speaking, don't alter what the manufacturer offers. Some let you go taller, some let you go shorter. It's generally a bad idea. Most people tend to regret it.
The lasts are specifically made for a specific heel height. It's engineered. It is made for a purpose. It is made for that height. It is not made for people to say, I want taller, I want shorter. So when you change it, changing the way that boot fits or it feels, whether it's the way it fits 5 minutes after you put them on, or whether it's the way it fits 6 hours after you put them on and whatnot. But it definitely changes things. And sometimes it is a lot more important the way that they position your body and the way that they take care of your feet as you're going through your day than whether somebody's whether you're worried about somebody looking at your boots and thinking, oh my God, look at those girly fucking heels.
Yeah. Funny story, the block heel, the manliest of the heels, right? If a heel this tall was a block heel, it would look way more girly than it would look any other way because it would look like a pair of platform shoes.
Heel choices are important. Lots of people trying to shorten that heel height, and most builders won't do it. Some builders will do it, and then the builders in the middle will strongly caution you against it and tell you that it'll be a big old mistake and make you sign a verbal waiver basically to say, yeah, I know I'm doing something stupid. And then they'll do it for you.
Yep. And you'll ruin your warranty in doing it. There's a lot less the warranty now after you make adjustments like that. Yeah, because as Jeff said, it's the entire anatomy of the boot. The toe spring to the heel height to the arch support are all a triangular calculation, and adjusting one of them screws with the other two. On that note, we are at the end of the episode.
Maybe. I guess we have to talk about whether we're at the end of the episode. What are we at? I started my timer late, but I'm at an hour 3.
Hour 18.
What are we at, an hour 25?
18.
So this is a good point to stop. We've had a lot of episodes be this long, but we had talked about whether we were going to talk about our own personal mistakes, our own personal regrets.
That's our next episode. I got it.
Oh, was that supposed to be its own episode?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep. Yeah, I've got more than 30 minutes to talk about on this. So
don't listen to the guy in the Maiden t-shirt. He's drunk. All right.
All right. Well, for everybody, please like, comment, subscribe. We answer questions. I think we've had some pretty good feedback in the last couple episodes. One, somebody asked about edge dressing, and they got a whole episode about how to do that edge dressing method we talked about. In the previous one, we actually went down discussing how Truman does their tongues and some of the mistakes Truman's made and how they've circled around those mistakes. So we've done a decent bit and recently just of direct interaction. And, you know, if people are interested in asking questions, that might become a video. Maybe it's a good enough one to make a video out of. In the previous video, we asked, and we'll ask again, if you guys have collections that you would like us to rate. If you could send us pictures and a list of your collection, we'll go through, rate the collection, give our opinions, and kind of how we feel about your collection and what we think it hits well and maybe what it's missing a little bit.
Cool.
Anyway, thanks for watching. I was Mike.
Chris.
Jeff.
See you guys in
Awesome.
the next one.
Take care.